3, 2, 1.
Hello viewers, in today you guys how to make a type of story game between two characters talking to each other where they can actually speak, not just writing text on your screen. So if you guys know what a story game is, it is when two characters or multiple characters talk to each other about something. But in Scratch, we all know this normal story game where we have to make it to be saying text, but that you can impute one extension that will make them to actually speak tone. So if we first want to get the voice tone, we first have to click on this thing over here to add an extension, because an extension is something that you add to your advanced. So then you can see there are so many different extensions, but the extension we are looking for is this text to speech extension. It helps us to translate the text to them actually talking. So when we click on the extension, it adds a new block here and it gives us 3 codes. So now that we now have the extension block added, we can now choose a sprite of our choice. So I'll choose this every sprite, or Abby. I think every should be better, so I'll click on every. Then now that we have every here, we can now select a backdrop. We choose a sprite, then we now make the character. So now that we have these sprites over here, you can see the sprites can't talk or anything. So that's why we now added this extension over here. So it allows us to be able to make the character to actually speak. So for us to make this character to be able to speak, we'll click on the event tab. Then we'll now drag out when green flag clicked. This code is to make it so whenever you click on this green flag over here, you should play the code. So then I will put speak hello, bring that out, and set voice to auto. So we want to set the voice to auto, then speak the hello. So now our character can actually speak hello. So now that we have it speaking the hello, it's now next for us to pick a backdrop. So any backdrop of your choice. I'm going to go with the underwater backdrop. So I'll search for underwater one. This is the backdrop I want. Now we have to click on this character to go to the next backdrop so that we'll be able to code it. So whenever we click on this character, it should take us to the next backdrop. So as always, as we start most of the code, we click on events. Then this time around, not when green flag clicked, when this sprite clicked, because we want it whenever this sprite is clicked, it should change the backdrop. So now that we have the when this sprite clicked, we need to go to the looks tab and find the next backdrop. So whenever this sprite is clicked, it changes the backdrop like that. So now we have to choose another sprite. So I think I'll just go with a dinosaur, because I think I want this thing to be like two friends, Avery and a dinosaur, talking to each other. So now that we have the 2 sprites over here like this, as you can see, whenever I click on Avery, it always changes the background or backdrop. So now we have our second sprite. We need to code this sprite to be able to do stuff. So first things first, we need to code it to be able to move around. So we'll go to dinosaur. Then as usual, we start with events tab, but this time around, when backdrop switches to underwater one, then it should say something, because we want it immediately we click on this player over here and it switches to backdrop one, it should set its voice to auto, then it should now do some other stuff. So first things first, we change this set voice from auto to giants, because that's what we want. Then it will now speak something different. So let's change this hello to let's explore. Maybe that should be something a dinosaur can say. So let's explore. Then now that we have that code, I can go to the motions tab, glide 1 seconds to random position, and glide 1 seconds to this x and y 32. So now we change this to be minus 100, then minus 10. So then when we now change them both to be the exact coordinates, then we can now choose another back. But since you guys saw that we already picked a dinosaur as our character, so let's pick something related to a dinosaur, which is Jurassic. This is what we need, this Jurassic backdrop. So when we now click on it, we now need to make this dinosaur to talk whenever this Jurassic background. So we come to our events, when to Jurassic. As you can see, before it was only showing backdrop 1 and underwater, but now that we added a new backdrop, show it here. So we select the Jurassic, then we will now go to looks and switch the costume. So let's go dinosaur D, dinosaur 4D, because I think this is the best one for where we now want to say. Then we'll now go to the text and speak, since we have set its voice to something else, so we don't need to change the set voice. So dinosaur is saying there's no place like home. That's what I want the dinosaur to say. So now that we can now do that, we put an exclamation mark. Then we can now go back to the looks tab and switch the costume over here to dinosaur A. So let me just change it up a little bit like this. So now that we now have it like that, we now need to choose another backdrop again. So we'll select a dance backdrop where we dance. So let me find music, then this spotlight backdrop because it looks like the best. Then we now need to find a dance that you can dance to, a song that you can dance to. So if we want to find a song, we need to go to the sounds tab so that we can now find various songs. So then I'm going to pick a different song because this pop sound isn't really the best for something like this where we want a dance party. So I will exit and you select here to add a new sound, and let's just search for something like drumming because I think that will be the best sound. This drum, let's see. Yeah, I think this is the best one. So now we can come back to our code, and now let's make this our character over here. So when it switches, it should start dancing. So we'll click on our events tab and bring out the same when backdrop switches to spotlight, since we added the new backdrop. Then the dinosaur should speak and say check out these moves. So let's change that as if the dinosaur is dancing. Check out these moves, just like that. Then we'll put an exclamation mark at the end. So now we should now start playing the sound so that the dinosaur can actually dance to it. So I'll bring out start sound job. You guys might be wondering what sound and play sound. Play sound and start sound are they are the same thing, they work the same way. Play sound, what they are meant to do is play sound is going to play it until every of your program is run, while start sound is just going to start it. So they should do pretty thing, and you can still use them in most cases. I'm going to pick start sound. You guys can use play sound if you like. So then we'll click on repeat 10, but I don't want it to repeat this 10 times. Let's put about 20 times. That should work. Then we'll now go to our looks tab and put next costume. So it will keep on repeating it as if it is actually dancing. That's what we are trying to make it look like, as if this sprite is dancing. So we'll put wait 1 second, but that should be too long, so seconds. And then when the backdrop switches to spotlight,
hello, there's no place like home,
is Jurassic. There's no place like home. This is how it looks whenever it is Jurassic, but
check out these moves
in spotlight it is like doing as if he's dancing, and I think you guys should be hearing the music. So now let's just ask it to ask some questions, but this time around we'll not say it, we'll type some of them out so that it will actually say like it's a scratch character. So finally, when green flag clicked, then motion ask. We're looking for the ask command, but it should be in, what is it called, motion. We need to find where ask is. Ask should most of the time be, we need to check for ask, because ask was ask over here. So we now drag it and drop it over here. So it will now ask what's your name, then it will now come to text to speech. Speak hello there or hi there. I'll just use the shorter form over here like this. Then finally we now speak, but then we now go to our sensing command and put answer over here. You see why
Hello.
when I show you. So whenever it speaks, it will now give us this way where we can now answer. So if I put FFF,
Hi
and
there.
that is it. It will always ask us what is our name whenever we start a new. Click on the green flag again.
There's no place
As you
like
can
home.
see. So now we have pretty much made like these two characters talking and having fun. So if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.